Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're doing a historic weather video for today's video here at Gazovitz on this late spring bank holiday Monday. So as always at Gazovitz on a bank holiday, we like to do a historic video, primarily because it means I get to take the day off. But I know a lot of you do enjoy seeing the historic weather videos, which have kind of like taken on a bit of a life of their own, separate to everything else that happens here at Gazovitz. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to have a look at the, well, primarily at the summer of 1959. But this is one of those strange years where I think you're going to have to cover pretty much the whole of the year, because you don't see the beginnings of the summer pattern very early in the year, and it does actually go on very late into the year as well. So it's an incredible sort of extended summer that started very early, finished very late, and so we're going to have to go through pretty much the whole of 1959, but specifically focusing on that very extended classic warm summer, one of the best summers certainly of that period, because it wasn't a particularly good period for summers. In fact, there wouldn't be another really good summer until 1975 after 1959. So it was there weren't many good summers before that. There was 1955, but overall the 1950s, 1960s not really remembered for their good summers. So this is a classic, and I'm going to talk you through all of the patterns that happened in 1959 for your historic weather video in a moment. Just to say that the websites we're using for the historic weather video, as always, we see the charts from weathercentral.de, and all of the information that you hear within this video, or most of it anyway, will have come from Trevor Harley's personal weather website. You can find the link to weathercentral.de, which now has a historic archive of charts going right way back to 1851. You can find the historic archive of charts and also Trevor Harley's personal weather website. You can find the links to both of those websites on the links page. And as ever, big thank you again to those websites for allowing me to use their information, because I couldn't do these weather videos without the charts and the information. I think that's what makes the historic videos so good. It's the charts combined with the information, and I'm like the smallest part of all of this, so I'm just like the narrator. Really. So, big thank you to Harley, big thank you to weathercentral.de. Do have a look at those websites if you get the chance. So, without anything else left to say, let's get on with it, and we're going to begin on the first day of January 1959. This is how New Year's Day 1959 is looking, with low pressure out to the west of the country, and generally reasonably mild. But it wasn't long before it turned cold, and this is one of the few cold months that we have in 1959. This has a central England temperature of just 1.6 degrees, so it's a pretty cold month to say the least. And the reason is that we have low pressure moving out to the east on the 5th, and it pulls down this very cold northerly wind. Trevor Harley writes, the sunniest January since records began in around 1875 is January 1959. The average for England and Wales was 84 hours, with Lucas in Fife setting its January record sunshine total of 101 hours. Bournemouth enjoyed a record January total sunshine of 115 hours. It was a cold month, though. Overall, a central temperature, as I just said, of 1.6. There was snow at times, with heavy snow in the north. The 15th was a cold day, with a maximum temperature of only -5 at Renfrew. So this is one of a few cold months of the year of 1959. We get this area of low pressure zipping across the country on the 7th. That would have brought rain and snow across the country. And then we're back to that bitterly cold northerly wind again on the 10th, another Arctic shot. This is that very cold day with a maximum temperature of only -5 at Renfrew, as these areas of low pressure trying to dislodge that cold air, no doubt producing a lot of snow once again, and failing in that attempt to dislodge the cold air. So by the 16th, we're back into those very cold northerly winds again. The 21st, though, sees the Atlantic breaking through. It's turning wet, windy, and stormy, no doubt with transitional snow. And by the 25th, we're into a different regime with high pressure building up from the southwest. Keep an eye on that high pressure. You're going to see a lot of high pressure in this video, I can promise you that. And look at this, we go through to 28. Very interesting. That high pressure has shifted over towards Germany with its centre, and it's bringing up these slack southerly winds. Now, at this point, because it's still midwinter, that's cold, that's frost and fog. Not Arctic cold, but certainly been a lot of frost and fog, maybe a little bit of smog type condition with that. But the position of that high pressure is something that you're going to see a lot of that through this video. You're going to see a lot of high pressure sitting generally to the east of the country. So already maybe a few hints of a pattern that's to come for the summer. We get through to the last day of January and high pressure has relocated over the top of the British Isles. So it's turning, or it's staying mainly dry. And still probably quite chilly too. That takes us through to February. February is a very dry month, and that's another factor about 959. It's a very dry year. So February, very dry month, the second driest on record, with only 9 millimetres all month across England and Wales. Overall, it's a cold month with frequent fog. There were some severe frost in the north at first, but it ends on a warm note, so we'll get to that in a second. We begin quite cold though, this high pressure still to our east. Again, it's a pattern, you're going to see a lot of this during this video. So high pressure centering to the east, drawing up these south to southeast winds, which, because they're continental winds, because it's still midwinter, are generally cold. So we have this cold start to February 1959 with a lot of frost and fog. However, the high pressure, although staying in control, repositions and becomes centred more across Central Europe through the middle part of the month. This is Valentine's Day 1959. That's starting to drag up warmer air from the west and the southwest again. The 17th shows high pressure right over top of the country and stretched out into much of Central Europe too. It's a relatively mild air mass that we've got now. 21st, he's trying to bring down another cold shot from the north around this area of low pressure, but essentially we're remaining on the mild side of the ridge. And then we go up to the final days of the month where it does turn a lot milder. So 18.9 degrees Celsius is recorded at Greenwich on the 28th. By the way, there was a pressure reading of 1,047 millibars across southern England on the 16th of February. So obviously it is a very, very anti-cyclonic month indeed. So this is the final day of February 1959, and this is the pressure pattern that is delivering that temperature of 19 degrees Celsius essentially across southeastern England. And again, it's going to be a recurring pattern through the year with lots of high pressure to the south, to the southeast, and low pressure out to the northwest. So the air is very warm, being dragged up from the southwest. And that takes us into the spring of 1959, which Trevor Hardy writes is mild and very dry. But in the northeast, it was very dry in the northeast. But in the west and southwest, it was a little bit wetter. It's a dull month and rather changeable around mid-month. So it's one of those months I don't have a huge amount to work with. But it looks like it turns very unsettled on the 5th with low pressure out to the west at 955 millibars, a really stormy, deep area of low pressure. But very quickly, that low pressure is actually pushed back into middle of the Atlantic by this ridge that we see again is trying to get going and build to our east. And so that sets us up for this kind of a pattern. By the 20th, we've got the high pressure in over Scandinavia, and so a lot of dry weather again. We know that the northeast in particular was very dry close to this area of high pressure, and the air is being dragged up from a southerly to southwesterly direction once again. That's how we end March 1959, with the ridge down to the southwest, the blessed Azores High, trying to build to this ridge up over Scandinavia. We go through to April, which is quite a warm month, and what we see in April is that there's a particularly warm spell around the middle part of the month. It's sunny in the east, but quite dull elsewhere. And in the southwest, it is pretty wet through the course of this month, with Plymouth seeing twice the average rainfall. Birmingham had 38 millimetres of rain on the 16th. So we go through the course of April, and we go into a very unsettled spell through the early part of the month. This is the 10th, with this deep trough of low pressure over top of the country, and a little bit of a northern blocking signal, which is something we hadn't seen since January. Up to this point, but it doesn't last very long. It certainly doesn't lock us in to a cold spell, and by the 14th of April we're getting this deep low pressure down to the southwest that's turning things wet and windy. That's the 18th, with high pressure building through the country, and so that's trying to bring the wind into the north and the northeast, so a little bit cooler, but it's also trying to bring us into drier conditions. The 21st sees high pressure re-establishing across the country, turning things mainly dry. And then as we go into the final week of April, all looking a little bit mixed still. Really, that's how we go to the final day of April 1959. Again, looking rather mixed. So this is one of the more changeable months through the year in 1959. We get through to May, and that's how we start the 1st of May 1959, with high pressure out to west and the southwest and low pressure up to the north. Trevor Harley writes that for May 1959, a glorious extended summer begins on the 5th. The second week was particularly warm. It was hot and sunny at the end of the month, and particularly so for Scotland. So let's see what happens. We find on the 3rd, still looking rather unsettled, but we're looking out for this date on the 5th, and that is the 5th of May 1959, with pressure beginning to rise around the country, and these low pressure areas being forced out to the north and to the west. The 8th still has low pressure out to the northwest, so still looking a little bit changed. Well, by the 10th, high pressure is in over Scandinavia, and it's bringing up these southeasterly to easterly winds. Look at that. By the 12th, we are firmly going into a warm and dry pattern then, with high pressure extending through Scandinavia, bringing the winds into the east and the southeast. They're dragging up much warmer air from southern parts of Europe. That's the 15th of May 1959, where again high pressure is ridging through the country. You know, this second week of May was a particularly hot week of the month. We get through to the 18th, that high pressure's gone a little bit more towards the northwest. It's starting to pull down some slightly cooler air from a north or northeasterly direction. And so by the 21st, it is turning a little bit more unsettled to the south, trying to bring some thunderstorms up from the south with this area of low pressure. But further north, it's essentially this high, the anticyclone, that is dominating the weather. Into the 24th and on to the 28th, we keep a lot of anticyclonic influences going across the country, and that's how we end May 1959, just trying to break that ridge down a little bit, trying to turn slightly more unsettled, especially so to the north or west. Right, so we're through to the summer of 1959. This is June the 1st, and it's a warmer than average month. It has a central temperature of 15.2 degrees, the start of a glorious extended summer. So let's see what happens. We get through the first few days and still quite unsettled, but by the 5th, high pressure is building again to our east. Bit of a battle going on the 7th. We've got low pressure trying to pile in from off the Atlantic, but the high pressure is there to our east. And as we go through to the 10th, and on to the 11th, we see the Azores High beginning to make its move. This is the first signs of what is going to become a very warm summer pattern. That's the 12th of June 1959, and the high pressure from the Azores has taken over. It's built up across the country, sent its ridge across the country, and so that's bringing much, much warmer weather with it. Carrying on through to the 13th and the 14th, we get this huge area of high pressure setting up slap bang over the top of the country. This day, the 14th of June 1959, sees temperatures going up to 28.3 degrees at Dundee. It has the highest pressure record for June on record at 1,000 and 43 millibars over Northern Ireland. Not sure what day that's recorded, but this shows the central pressure of this ridge up to 1,040 millibars here on the 14th of June. So maybe it was this day that we got that tremendous high pressure record. Through to the 15th, we start to take that high pressure just a little bit out towards the west, try and bring down some cooler air from the north, but essentially this is still very warm, if not hot, and very dry too. However, because it's still early summer, it does turn a little bit more unsettled again. So on the 18th, we bring a weather front down from the northwest around this area of low pressure. So that starts to turn things a bit more unsettled briefly, but only very briefly, because look at this, the 21st of June, the longest day of the year, sees that high pressure back in over Scandinavia. It sees us bringing in those warm east to southeasterly winds once again, and then that sets up for what looks like a very warm spell there as going to the final week of June. We have that high pressure over Scandinavia bringing up those east to southeasterly winds. The air's originating from southern Europe, and I'm sure that would be lifting temperatures at least into the mid to upper 20s Celsius. The final days of the month turn a little bit more unsettled and a little bit cooler. But overall, this is a very, very nice June indeed, with that CET of 15.2 degrees. And so that takes us into July. And July is a hot month. It has a central temperature of 17.3. And it's very sunny. Trevor Hardy writes, it's part of a superb summer with some thundery interludes occurring mid-month. So again, we see on the first day of July, despite that little slightly more unsettled end to June, the Azores high essentially it's back in again to the southwest on the first day of July, and we see that ridge by the 3rd of July extending across much of Western Europe. It's building up from the Azores. Low pressure out to the northwest would have been bringing wet weather to the north and the west of the country, but that quickly is pushed out of the way, and by the 5th we're setting up high pressure over to the east of the UK, which starts to drag up hot winds from the south. There was a very warm spell from the 4th to the 8th of July. The highest temperature of the year was recorded on this day, on the 5th. We go up to 35.6 degrees at Gumby in Lincolnshire, although this reading might have been too high, so it is a slightly unreliable reading, with a more reliable maximum temperature of 34.4 at Cromer and 33.3 at London Heathrow, and also in parts of Norfolk as well. We see the temperature going up to 34.4 degrees. So really hot spell of weather taking place here through the early part of July 1959, and by the 6th we are keeping that ridge very close to us. It's probably turning a little bit cooler from the north across northern parts of the country, but for much of the southern Britain anyway, we're close to this ridge of high pressure, and it still looks very, very warm, if not hot indeed. That's the 8th, with the ridge continuing to be extending across the south, so still looking really hot at this point. And then we go through to the upper air temperatures, and just look how warm they are. So we've got the 15 Celsius isotherm there across much of the south and the east, although it is a little bit cooler out to the northwest, but much of the country, particularly for the south and east, in true sort of heat wave condition. This is the 9th, and we start to get some thunderstorms going now. So there were some violent thunderstorms in the south from the 9th through to the 11th, as low pressure systems move northeast from Spain across southern England, with some particularly spectacular thunderstorms on the night of the 10th and the 11th. Hailstones with a diameter of 5 centimetres caused damage at Wokingham. At Watford, 19 millimetres of rain fell in just 10 minutes on this day, 9th of July, 1959, with 63.5 millimetres. So that's kind of like 2.5 inches of rain falling in 20 minutes at somewhere called now I have to spell this correctly, Hind Ulverston in Norfolk on the night of the 10th to the 11th. Equal 3rd highest rainfall rate of the century and is still the highest 20-minute rainfall record in the UK. We also get 59 millimeters of rain falling in 100 minutes, I should say, at Heathrow, and 44 millimeters of rain falling in half an hour at Norfolk, and a total of 89 millimeters in Cambridgeshire, with flooding. Not sure how quickly that 89 millimeters fell, but obviously some huge and spectacular thunderstorms going on here on the 9th of July. And the reason is that the ridge is moving over towards Central Eastern Europe, and we're pulling up these very hot southerly winds, but it's also unstable with the low pressure coming out of Biscay in France and heading northwards. That's the 10th, still with those thundering lows to the south and the southeast. A ridge out to the northwest is trying to bring down cooler air from the north as well. So there's a clash of air masses, hot air to the south and the east, cooler air to the north. That's helping to trigger those very violent thunderstorms. The 11th looks like that, and we finally start to resolve this as this area of low pressure pushes through. By the 12th, we're into a cooler and fresher air mass. Trevor Hardy writes, there was then many places had no measurable rain from the 11th through to 25th across southeastern England, but there's more thunderstorms to come at the end of the month. So we push that low pressure through, change the air mass, no doubt cool it down a little bit, but again you see we still have this influence from the excuse me, we still have this influence from this ridge out in the Atlantic and the Azores. And so by the 17th, here we go again. Pressure is rising over Scandinavia. The Azores high is sending its ridge into France. So although low pressure is out to the northwest of the British Isles, and in a typical summer you'll probably expect that low pressure to just roll in and bring those westerlies back, what actually happens here is that we get this ridge building from the Azores high out there to the Scandinavian high up there. We build this ridge up across the country on the 20th, and so off and running it we go again into another spell of very warm heat wave type conditions with lots of dry weather too. So a big ridge extending thousands of miles from the Atlantic into northern Europe on the 21st, and that ridge still there on the 23rd. We head up towards the 26th. It's beginning to turn more unsettled again. So now we start to get more thunderstorms. Trevor Hardy writes, there were more thunderstorms at the end of the month. And what happened is I had 45 millimeters of rain in just an hour at Garstang on the 26th. As a consequence, rainfall totals for the month were quite variable across the country. So no doubt some places had a drought this month. Some places probably didn't record hardly any measurable rain. Other places probably came out with a very wet month, all down to localised thunderstorm conditions. That low pressure moves through the country as we get through to the 28th, and by the 31st it's exiting away to the east, back into a cooler air mass. But you've guessed it, we've still got high pressure very, very close to the country, so this summer still has further to go. And at that point, I think we'll just pause the video, maybe go off and have, get a couple of biscuits, maybe get a drink of water or a cup of tea. And I think we'll meet back in around a minute or so's time. So you go off and get yourself a cup of tea and some biscuits. I'll go and get myself a glass of water, and I'll see you soon. Okay, we're back and ready to resume our look at the year generally of 1959, but with the specific focus being on the summer. So I'll just check to make sure I'm recording. Yes, we are. So we got up to July 1959, which is a very warm month, had a central temperature of 17.3, but also contained some tremendous severe thunderstorms. Now we're through to August, so this is how the first day of August 1959 looks, with again a lot of high pressure influences. So although we turned it a little bit more unsettled right at the very end of July, overall the high pressure is still in control of the weather pattern. The centre, from the Azores out in the Atlantic to the ridge over Scandinavia, is building this big area of high pressure through the country. August 9:59 has a central England temperature of 17.2, part of a wonderful extended summer. So obviously we're going to see more high pressure influences. That's how things are looking on the 4th and through to the 6th. With high pressure generally ridging through the country, the centre a little bit to our west, so this wouldn't be the hottest period of the summer, but still, I'm sure, temperatures at least into the low to mid 20 Celsius under this ridge, and also I bet there'd have been bags of sunshine as well. We go through to the 10th, and this gives us our last notable thunderstorms of the season. Actually, so on this day, the 10th of August 1959, we get 130 millimetres of rain at Porlock in Somerset, and also 90 millimetres of rain falling in Birmingham. So more big thunderstorms being produced here on the 10th of August 1959, with this area of high pressure centred just to our east, and again we're pulling up those very, very warm southerly to southeasterly winds once more. The middle part of the month does look a little bit more unsettled, actually, substantially so by the 15th. Look at this, we've got perhaps a little bit of a hint of an autumn gale there, with a 980 millibar area of low pressure just to the west of Scotland. And is this the breakdown to the warm summer? Is this a switch to autumn? Well, not at all. We find high pressure again coming back up from the south and the southwest. We still have this strong ridge up over Scandinavia. So that's what was a storm on the 15th. By the 16th of August, it's being squeezed out up to the north. Nevertheless, I'm sure that must have given some really quite windy weather to the north and the northwest. Trevor Hardy doesn't say anything about that, but I'm sure there must have been gale force gusts recorded up to the north and the west. But very quickly by the 17th, that low pressure is a dim and distant memory, as high pressure is again building back up from the south and the southwest. This big ridge extending up from the Azores high, pushing across to Scandinavia and just taking us back into another spell of hot, dry and sunny weather. That's how things look on the 20th. Remember that pattern I showed you back at the end of January, with the high pressure centering across central parts of Europe to our east and the low pressure out in the Atlantic. Remarkable similarity here on the 20th of August shows that this has been a repeating and a recurring pattern that's been churning away pretty much since the early part of the year. This day, the 20th of August, actually gives us our hottest month, our hottest temperature of the month, with 31 degrees, 88 Fahrenheit, being recorded in Doncaster. So very warm air again coming up from the south and the southeast. A little bit more unsettled there on the 21st, attempting anyway, but by the 23rd again the high pressure is ridging back up from the Azores high, and so off we go once again to 25th. High pressure is just dominating the weather so much across England and Wales. A prolonged spell of dry and very warm weather, always a little bit more unsettled up to the north and west. Scotland getting some rain, I'm sure, but as we go through to the closing stages of August and of the summer of 1959, we do so with high pressure firmly anchored and rooted just to almost over the top of the UK. And that's how we look as we get through to the end of the month and the end of the summer. High pressure is slap bang over the top of the country. So we end the summer of 1959, one of the best summers for a long time up to that point, and one of the best summers of the 20th century, really. We end it on a very dry and a very warm note indeed. And so that takes us through to the autumn. And of course what's going to happen here is that this pattern is going to keep churning away well into the autumn as well. So this is a very warm September. South winds are looking on the Thursday of September 1959. We still have that ridge centred over top of the country. September 1959 has a century temperature of 14.9, part of a tremendous extended summer. The driest September on record for most places. Many areas in the east and also in Plymouth were extremely dry, with just 0.1 millimetres of rain. And many places had no rain at all through the course of this month. An average across England and Wales, that's for England and Wales, of just 8.4 millimetres, 10% of average. Near Colchester and Lowestoft, there was no measurable rain at all this month from the 14th of August to the 9th of October. That's 57 days, the longest running period without any rainfall since the spring of 1893. So there's that year again, 1893. We did the historic video for the May Day bank holiday Monday, looking at the spring and summer of 1893. And if you like, this is a little bit of a follow-on from that. There is a plan going on here. I do think about this and give some thought to it. So that's the reason I've chosen 1959, because it has the longest run of no measurable rainfall since 1893. So here we go. We have high pressure over the top of the country on the first day of September 1959, and that high pressure continues through to the 4th as well, completely dominating the weather pattern. And then that takes us through into the 7th. You've guessed it, high pressure is still there, and it's there on the 10th as well, firmly over the top of the country. So it has a notable heat wave around this period. 30 degrees is recorded, 86 Fahrenheit, incredible temperature at Gatwick on the 11th. And it's also a really sunny month with 255 hours of sunshine in Plymouth. So under this ridge on the 11th of September 1959, we're dragging up these southerly winds again. That's lifting temperatures to 30 degrees, 86 Fahrenheit in Gatwick, and quite widely, I suspect, across the country. We're seeing temperatures into the mid to possibly upper 20 Celsius as well. There's the upper air temperatures. They're looking really warm for so late in the year, with the 15 Celsius isotherm not too far from southeastern England. The 14th keeps this prolonged spell of dry weather going, with high pressure again rooted over the top of the country. Absolutely incredible weather patterns, really. And on the 17th, still high pressure dominating, although a thundery low around Biscay is possibly trying to threaten some thunderstorms to the south. The 21st, around the vernal equinox, sees us trying to go into a slightly more autumnal pattern. Low pressure is deepening around Greenland and Iceland, associated with the polar vortex. So we're trying to bring the jet streams south and trying to get into sort of an autumnal type westerly weather pattern. But still, this ridge from the Azores High goes on across the south. It just doesn't want to go anywhere. The 25th is trying to turn more unsettled out to the west of the country, but essentially we still have this ridge going to our south and southeast. As we go into the closing days of September 1959, the ridge just strengthens again. So that's how we close September 59, with again that pattern that we saw right way back at the very start of all of this, back in January and February. We're back to that pattern again of high pressure centred over central parts of Europe, low pressure out to the west of Ireland, and bring up this warm to hot southerly to southeasterly wind. And that's a pattern that takes us into October. We're now well into the autumn, but this extended summer does not want to go away. October 1959 has a central temperature of 12.6, so it's a really warm month, particularly up to that point. Have had warmer October since, but to this point, to 1959, that's a very, very warm October indeed. Trevor Hardy writes that it's a very warm and notably sunny first half to the month, in particular with a notable heat wave. We get 28.3 degrees in several places in the southeast on the 3rd of October, this day, 1959. And the reason is because, again, the high pressure is dominating across most of Europe, particularly Central and Southern Europe, and with the low pressure out to the west, we're dragging the air up from the south. And just look how far south those southerly winds are coming from. Air originating from North Africa is being pumped northwards on these southerly winds through the first week of October 1959. Trevor Hardy writes about temperatures in excess of 27 degrees, 81 Fahrenheit, were widespread across many parts of the country through the first week, caused by those southerly to southeasterly winds. So still the very warm extended summer continues. That's the 5th of October, with again the high pressure to our east, the low pressure out to the west, and we're still dragging up that air from southern and southeastern parts of Europe. It doesn't want to break down, this high pressure. It's still there, dominated weather on the 7th, although beginning to turn just a little bit more unsettled out to west, some showery rain, maybe a bit thundering, pushing in to the west. Still the battle continues on the 8th, of the high pressure dominating to our east, the low pressure out to the west, the winds and the air still being forced up from the south. But by the 10th, finally, after so much high pressure, we begin to move these areas of low pressure in from off the Atlantic, and this finally starts to break down that tremendously dry and warm summer pattern. Trevor Hardy writes that after the great summer, the rain that we have in eastern England on the 10th of October was the first for 58 days since the 14th of August. So that prolonged, almost 2-month long period of no measurable rain across eastern England breaks on this day, the 10th of October, as low pressure begins to encroach from the Atlantic. And by the 11th, we do actually have an area of low pressure over top of the country, no doubt bringing showers or longer spells of rain as well. High pressure still not quite done though. On the 15th, it's having yet another go at building to the east of the country and getting the wind back into the south. So no doubt some more pretty warm and dry weather here. Possibly though by this point, mid-October, we're starting to get quite a lot of fog developing under these ridges. So maybe not all that pleasant conditions, but still the broad pattern is broadly the same. High pressure to the east and low pressure out to the west. But by the 17th, we do start to go into a more autumnal pattern, and Trevor Hardy writes that the weather deteriorated on 17th of October 1959 and ended cold and stormy though. So I'm not sure what that means. Sorry about that. It was particularly bad across. So I suppose it means the month ended on a cold and stormy note. It was particularly bad across Scotland on the 27th, with gales, the sunniest October on record, with 39% of sunshine, sunshine 39% of average. So the Atlantic breaks through. That's the broad message. After that final go, again the high pressure to our east, around the middle of the month, the Atlantic is pushing through here during the second half of the month. It's not a cold pattern per se, but it certainly would be a lot cooler compared to the continuous ridges that we had through the first half of the month. And the main thing is that it's much more of an autumnal autumn month now, going into showers and longer spells of rain, and no doubt some pretty strong winds as well. There's that gale on the 27th. That would have brought gales to most parts of the country, I would have thought, but possibly severe gales up in the north. And as that clears out of the way, it turns the winds into the north, so a lot colder by that point, and no doubt maybe bringing us our first frost of the season. And I'll just close you out to the rest of the year. So November and December 1959 are both unsettled months. So after all of that high pressure, we begin to get quite a bit of rain. I suppose it would have been really quite useful rain as well. They're both very mild months, though, November and December 1959. November comes out with a CT of 7.1 and December with a CT of 6.0. So low pressure coming through the country on the 15th. It's a different pattern as well. The jet stream's dipping southward, so this is proper autumnal conditions getting going now, and we run through into December, and Matt also looking unsettled, trying to build up a Scandinavian high there on the 5th, but it doesn't really come to much. It does get the wind just about into the east to southeast on the 10th, but very quickly it's broken down by the Atlantic. The 15th sees low pressure steamrolling through, and we go into very unsettled Christmas period. That's Christmas Day 1959, looking wet and unsettled to say the least. That's New Year's Day, also looking very wet, very unsettled, but also very mild with wind from the southwest. And so we end this really warm year of 1959 on a typically very mild note. The yearly CET for 1959 comes out at 10.48, so very warm year indeed. Of course, that's kind of like the yearly CETs we get a lot these days. But back then, that would have been a really notably warm year, especially around this period of the 1950s and 1960s, where there's a lot of cold years, particularly the 1960s. So that would have been a very, very warm year indeed at 10.48, with that glorious extended summer, which really began its origins as early as kind of like January and February. Was beginning to see the first hints of it, and still going on in the middle of October. Just those final 2 months of the year, kind of like going to a different pattern, much more stormier and wetter. Right, so that's your historic video for 1959. Hope you found it interesting and fun. A little bit of a shorter one, this one. I wanted to make it a bit short. Maybe going on a bit too long. Some of the historic videos lately getting to the hour mark. So I just wanted to make that a little bit shorter. But I think we covered pretty much everything that we needed to, particularly, of course, the hot weather through the summer. Thanks so much for tuning in on your late spring bank holiday Monday. And of course, the next bank holiday Monday isn't until the end of August. So I don't know what historic video we'll be doing then, but we will have a historic weather video, all being well, on August bank holiday Monday. But of course, after that, there's not going to be another one until Christmas Day. So only 2 more historic videos to do. Quite frightening thoughts. Only 2 more historic weather videos to do this year. Anyway, thanks so much for tuning in on your late spring bank holiday Monday. Normal service will be resumed tomorrow with your regular weather video updates. This video will be placed within the historic section of Gazweathervids later on today. It'll be given its own page, so you'll be able to come back and watch a video whenever you want via the historic section at Gazweathervids. Of course, it will be kept on the YouTube channel indefinitely too. But at 43 minutes, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.